Yeah, because our members are spread out and not always able to attend, we try to put this up on our YouTube channel so they can do that afterwards. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Charles Dahlquist, whom I have known, of him since what was it, I think it was 2004. It was right after you were called to be the Young Men's General President, came up and spoke at our Brigham City Tabernacle. And if you've ever had the chance to hear Charles, you know that he is a commanding and inspiring presenter, and a more passionate person about youth and serving youth you will not find. He did serve as the 20th general president of the Young Men's of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints from 2004 to 2009, and as such chaired the LDS Scouting Committee, which he'd been involved with scouting for quite some time before then, and has been more heavily involved even since then, serving as the 10th National Commissioner until May 2018. Still serves as a member of the National Executive Board. He gave me 58 seconds so I could go through everything else, but Charles has participated in jamborees, world jamborees, national the DSA contingent chair for the 2015 jamboree in Japan. He's received the Silver Buffalo, the National Venturing Leadership Award. Away from scouting, he has received the Award of Merit First Class from the President of the Federal Republic of Germany for his work as honorary consul of Germany in Utah for about 16 years. He serves on multiple boards. He's been a past president of Rotary Club in Salt Lake City. Last year, he received the Junior Achievement of Utah Business Hall of Fame. And but I think the things most dear to his heart are his wife Zella. They have 5 daughters. He says they call them Charlie's Angels, and 16 grandchildren. He loves flying, fly fishing, traveling, playing his banjo, and many of us have had the opportunity to hear that as well. And I do remember him saying that one time he was talking about people that were a little bit nervous about the cost of scouting uniforms. And while he had no sons, he said, you should try cheerleading and see how expensive that is. So, but really appreciate you coming, Charles, and look forward to your remarks. But yeah, I don't know that we could say enough about the kind of man or the inspiring leader and the contributions he's made to scouting, which is near and dear to all of our hearts. So it was a little more than 58 seconds, but I only used 58 seconds of what you provided me.
All right. Thank you, Jared. And thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. It's a busy time. There was a poem that when I look at you in different places, and you're all involved in Rotary, you're involved in business, many of you are involved in scouting. The poem went, the happiest nights I ever know are those where I've no place to go. And the missus says, when the day is through, tonight we haven't a thing to do. Oh, the joy of it and the peace untold of sitting around in my slippers old with music and book in my evening chair, knowing I needn't go anywhere, needn't hurry my evening meal nor force the smiles that I cannot feel, but can grab a book from a nearby shelf and drop all sham and be myself. Oh, the joy of it and the comfort rare. Nothing on earth with it can compare. And I'm sorry for him who doesn't know the joy of having no place to go. You're busy people, you will never know that joy. but it's a good thing to be busy, and it's a good thing to be engaged, and it's a good thing to make a difference. Tom Brokaw was once quoted as saying, in this country, it's easy to make a living, but it's tough to make a difference. And yet in Rotary, we know what it means to make a difference, and you're making a significant difference. For those of you that are involved in scouting and for your sponsorship or your involvement with the youth of the rising generation, I just can't say enough thanks to you, because I think there's never been a time in the history of this world, at least that I know of, when our youth have needed mentors and heroes and leaders and advisors more than they do now. It's a tough world out there, and our parents thought we had it tough, but it gets tougher and tougher, and they need things like the Rotary four-way test. They need things like the Scout Oath and Scout Law, and you know, we think about when we raise our arm to the square and say, "On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country." To obey the Scout, obey the Scout Law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. We think about that, and yet it's locked into the mind of our youth, and in a way that when they're tempted to cheat on a test, they remember a Scout is trustworthy. When they're tempted to move away from somebody that's not quite as a friend, that is not quite as popular, they remember a Scout is loyal. And all of those things are ingrained in them. And we learn those by memory, not just so we have something in our minds, but so we have something in our souls and our hearts. And it makes all the difference in the world. I think, Jared, we titled this talk, "Why I'm Still in Scouting," and let me just share a couple of things, and then I'd like to talk a little bit about Vanguard, because most of you don't have a clue what Vanguard is. And then I'd like to just open it up to any questions that you might have. Back in 1985, there was a young man by the name of Andy Flosdorf. Andy was a 13-year-old kid, and he was in Washington, D.C. He was representing his state in the National Spelling Bee, and this was a big deal. And he got up and he was given the word echolalia. Now, I'm not going to give that to you to spell, because you probably don't even know what it means, but it's a way of learning like a child learns a language. And so he spelled it, and then he sat down, and one of the kids he was sitting next to said, "How did you spell that?" And he realized at that moment that he had misspelled the word. And so he went up to the head judge and he said, "I misspelled the word." And the head judge says, "No, you didn't. We wanted to make sure, so we went back and listened to the tape while you were still standing there, and you were fine." And he said, "No, I misspelled the word." So the judge said, "Okay, let's listen to the tape again." And sure enough, he'd misspelled the word. He was immediately disqualified, and yet he stayed for lunch. He was invited to join them for lunch. At lunch, a newspaper reporter came up to him and said, "Andrew, why did you do that?" And this 13-year-old boy said, he was from Yonkers, or from, someplace in New York. He said, "Well," he says, "I just didn't want to feel like slime." That's a normal 13-year-old boy response. The reporter said, no. He says, "I don't want you to slough this off." He says, "It took a lot of courage to do that. Why did you do that? They'd already passed you off." And this Andrew Flosdorf said, "I'm a Scout, and a Scout is honest and trustworthy. And I wanted to be trustworthy." That's all. That's enough said. And that's the reason why we have the Scout Oath and Scout Law. Of course, Scouts do a lot of camping, and they do a lot of knot tying, and we have hundreds of merit badges, and you have to get certain ones in order to get the Eagle. But it's just like a very famous person said, "It's not about the bike. It's not about the Eagle. It's not about the merit badges. It's what happens inside these youth while they are doing all of these things." In fact, one of my friends who served as the president of the Boy Scouts of America a number of years ago from Medina, Washington, said, "In some ways, it's a little deceptive, because the kids think they're just having a good time, having fun, making friends, learning new skills and stuff." But he says, really, they're learning character values and life skills. And those are things that stick with us forever. And it's interesting, but as much emphasis as we put on the Eagle Scout Award, I know a lot who never made it past second class or first class, and yet who are dyed-in-the-wool supporters of scouting today just because of the impact that it had in their lives. And maybe they moved away, maybe they moved internationally, maybe they moved to an area that didn't have a scout troop or whatever else, but they are still boosters of scouting. In fact, when I was young men general president for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I was asked to go down to Dallas when the chief scout executive retired, and I was asked to give a prayer at that retirement dinner. So I got up there and prayed, sat down, and started my lunch. And Rick Kronk, who is Mr. Dreyer's Ice Cream, who was the president of the BSA at the time, got up and he said, "I'm going to give a cheer for all of the Life Scouts in the Boy Scouts of America." So would all the Life Scouts stand up? No, all the Star Scouts stand up. That's what it was. So all these, I looked around and here are these people that are flying in with private jets and are involved, giving millions of dollars to scouting, or their scoutmasters, or their area presidents, or their whatever it is. They're giving their lives to scouting. And I looked around and they're Star Scouts. And I began to realize that even early on, scouting has a profound difference. In fact, if you would have asked Baden-Powell what the award is that he would want every boy to have, of course, now it's every boy and girl. It wasn't the Eagle Award, it was the First Class Award, because first class is where they have all of these critical life skills. After first class, you start getting these merit badges and more life skills, but it's the character values, it's the first aid, it's being honest, trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. It's learning to do a good turn daily. It's learning what it means to be prepared. All of those basic things that scouting is all about, and it's the same today. There is no difference today. Oh, we have a number of merit badges that would really surprise you. If you're not in scouting, you'd be surprised at the new merit badges that have come in the last 10 years to meet the needs of the youth and to be able to help them to be prepared for life and for the workforce and everything else. It is really exciting. I have to tell you that President Thomas S. Monson, who is the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, was a little discouraged when they discontinued the bird raising merit badge because that was his favorite. He raised pigeons, and but nobody was getting it, and very few are getting bugling, which was one of my favorite merit badges. And there are some that just kind of go by the wayside and are discontinued because society changes, but scouting remains as relevant as it ever did. That's the reason why I'm in there. Let me just mention just a couple of things. You know, when we're working with youth, or even when you're working in Rotary, we just do the best we can as we serve people, as we teach them, as you go into the schools and teach. Some of you are involved in programs that go into the schools and teach. I sit on a junior achievement board as well and go into the schools, and we never know when somebody's ready to have their life changed, or when something we say or something we do or something we encourage them to do will be life-changing for them. And it's the same with scouting. We're just teaching these skills, and all of a sudden you have a Latter-day Saint missionary off in Scotland. I learned about it by a letter that came to me that said, "I am so grateful for the scouting program." This young man who is serving as a missionary here in Scotland was in a local restaurant having lunch with his companion, and all of a sudden somebody across the room started to choke. This young man immediately got up, stood the guy up, turned him around, got behind him, performed the Heimlich maneuver, and a piece of beef shot out across the room, and this guy started breathing again. And there was a young man who had learned exactly what to do when you smell smoke. And so he smelled smoke in the middle of the night. He was living with his grandparents. He goes up, grabs them out, pulls them out of the house, immediately calls 911 and saves these grandparents and a good part of his house just because he was prepared. There was a young man who was at a religious baptism, and they're just gathered in the beginning, and somebody said, "Oh, look, there's a child in the baptismal font," and this young man was taught in his life-saving merit badge, take his shoes off and go in. He took one shoe off and was over the plexiglass and into the baptismal font, pulled up that young baby, and it was only then, as he handed it up to the adults that were up there, that he realized that this was his brother who was drowning in that font. I've got a story here that is from President Thomas S. Monson. I worked closely with President Monson over the years, and he was a great scouter. And he included this in one of his talks. A few years ago, a scouting skill saved a life in my own family. My nephew's son, 11-year-old Craig Dearden, successfully completed his requirements for Scouting Swimming Award. His father beamed his approval while mother tenderly placed an affectionate kiss. Little did those attending the Court of Honor realize the life or death impact of that award. Later that very afternoon, it was Craig who spotted a dark object at the deep end of the swimming pool. It was Craig who, without fear, plunged into the pool to investigate and brought to the surface his own little brother. Tiny Scott was so still, so blue, so lifeless. Recalling the life-saving procedures he had learned and practiced, Craig and others responded in the true tradition of scouting. Suddenly there was a cry, breathing, movement, life. Is scouting relevant? Ask a mother, a father, a family who knew a scouting skill saved a son and a brother. So, you know, I've got story after story after story of these, the impact that scouting has and continues to have in the life of the rising generation. And that's the reason that I'm there. Now, many of you know that on January 1st of 2020, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints made a move to discontinue its charter partnership with the Boy Scouts of America and focus on a worldwide program within the church, its own youth program worldwide. I like to look at that in that date as being, instead of when the church discontinued scouting, as to when scouting became voluntary for Latter-day Saints. Before that, if you were a member of a local ward, you were in a priesthood quorum, which is a group of young men, and they all registered in scouting because scouting was the activity arm of the church. After 1/1/2020, it became voluntary. And so as it became voluntary, we knew that there were going to be a lot of Latter-day Saints across not only the continent, but across the globe, who would continue their scouting adventure. And for that reason, in October of 2019, we formed the Vanguard International Scouting Association. So Pat, that's the answer to your question as to what Vanguard is. And the Vanguard International Scouting Association supports Latter-day Saints in scouting across the world. And there were a number of things that were going to change because with the church no longer being involved as a charter partner in scouting, the religious awards were going to go away. And there were a number of things that needed to happen. And so we formed this organization. And let me, if I can, let's see, am I able to share my screen here, Liesl?
You should be able to share.
I think I probably can.
There we go.
Could you see that?
Yep.
Okay. Let me get to right here. Okay. You can see that okay?
Yep.
Okay. So this first screen tells a little bit about me, but we've already had an introduction. Vanguard International Scouting Association is an independent organization. It's not church sponsored, and yet we keep the church apprised of what's going on and what we're doing. And it represents Latter-day Saints scouts and scouters worldwide. You'll see one of the changes that we made recently because we are now beginning to expand. Now that we have solidified our organization in the United States, we're now looking to expand internationally. We are funded by membership fees, donations, and product sales. That's it. And particularly in Jamboree years, that becomes significant, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. We have a great board. We have Lyle Knight, who's on the national executive team. He's been the vice president of Cub Scouting for Boy Scouts of America. He's in Billings, Montana. We have Wayne and Chris Perry, who are in Medina, Washington now, and just moved to have a home in Provo, Utah. Wayne was the president of the Boy Scouts of America. Chris was the course director for the first blended wood badge course at the summit. Both of them just dyed in the wool scouting, and such good people. Todd Moody is a lawyer in Las Vegas, Nevada, who's been an area president. Gordon Gee, who is the president of West Virginia University. Mark Francis, who's a Scout executive in Okinawa, Japan, and was the director of LDS relationships before taking this job in Japan. Jake Nickel was the chairman of, or the president and CEO of Leatherman Tools, also with Stanley Tools, and just a great soul. So we have a wonderful board of directors. We have 5 different classifications of membership, really 4 classifications. And then over on the far left side, you'll see an additional classification. But if you start on the right-hand side, this is a brand new classification. This is Friends of Vanguard Scouting. We realized that even though the associate membership was just $25, but we realized that $25 is a lot of money for some places in the world, a real lot of money, almost prohibitive. And so we established this Friends of Vanguard Scouting membership, where they can get, they can sign up, they can get the newsletter, they can get access to the website, whatever else they want. They get the link, they know what's going on, and they know that they're part of this this worldwide family of Latter-day Saints Scouting, and it doesn't cost them anything. The associate membership is $50. There's a lifetime membership, $250, sustaining membership, which was originally charter membership of $500. And then the 1913 Society, some of you may know that in 1913, that was the year that the Boy Scouts of America granted a charter to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Actually, the very first charter to become a charter partner. And to be part of the 1913 Society, that's a donation of $5,000 or more. Sometimes that is a focused donation where it's for Philmont or it's for a jamboree, and sometimes it's general donation. We depend heavily on those donations, especially, like I said, in jamboree years. And when we get down to another slide, I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the jamboree. But this year, our budget is $220,000. Now, that sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but half of that is going to one place, and I'll mention that in just a few minutes. Our purposes are 4. One is to represent members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to the BSA, to other national scouting organizations across the world, and to the World Organization of the Scouting Movement. We have been and continue to be what's called a consultative partner. And there are 11 religions that are recognized by WUSM and that are represented at the World Scout Jamboree. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is one denomination. And Vanguard steps into those shoes and will have booths at both jamborees, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We encourage Latter-day Saints to be involved in scouting. We believe that it's a good partnership even still, but families now have to make the difference, and it's voluntary. And many families are realizing that because of the nature of the youth program of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, their youth need additional activities. to be able to build these rounded youth. The church is doing a wonderful job in building spiritual strength and helping prepare the youth for the challenges that are around them from a spiritual standpoint. But there are other issues. Some feel that athletics is a good way, and it is. Some feel that student government is a good way, and it is. And some get involved in 4-H, and that's a wonderful character building organization. And scouting is a tremendous addition, partner, as you will, with the religious program of any church, whether you're Muslim or Protestant or Catholic or Jewish or whatever it is. It's a great partner. The third is we developed a religious award. The two awards from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints went away after 1/1/2020, and within a couple of months, we had announced 2 new awards, and I'll talk about those in a minute. And then we perform other functions that will encourage involvement in scouting programs by members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and which will further scouting. And we'll talk about one of those with regard to the Jamboree. Now, our activities are many, but I just want to highlight those that are in black. One is we represent Latter-day Saints, Scouts and Scouters and scouting families at world and national jamborees. And because of COVID, in 2023, there is both a national jamboree at the summit in West Virginia, as well as a World Scout Jamboree in Saemangeum in Korea. And the National Jamboree is the last 2 weeks of July, and the World Scout Jamboree is the first 2 weeks of August. So I'll be in West Virginia, and then basically get a change of socks and head east or head west to Korea for the World Scout Jamboree. In doing that, we have here in Utah, we have a growing refugee population, and scouting has done some amazing things with these refugee scouts. It's brought them off the street, out of the gangs, got them involved in scouting. And in fact, I have this picture that I was at an Eagle Court of Honor, and you can see these young men and see all of those merit badges that they have earned, and just see what's happening in their lives as a result of their experience. Many of these kids were driven out, or all of them, their families were driven out of Burma, Myanmar, and Cambodia, and that area of the world. They speak all different types of languages. They're from all different religions. But we have found that their experience at a scout jamboree is life-changing for them. Many of these kids have jobs that help put food on the table for their parents, and so it's not possible for them to earn the entire amount. They can earn some. And so we agreed with their leaders that for 36 scouts, 18 young men and 18 young women who wanted to go to the Jamboree, that we would scholarship them to the point of 50% of their registration fee. Registration fee is $6,200. That includes airfare, housing, everything, meals and everything, except a little spending money. And so we are providing $3,100 to each one of these scouts. When they have paid their $3,100 to the BSA, then we'll automatically send a check to the Boy Scouts of America to pay them up for the entire amount. It's a good thing. And to see what happens in the lives of these kids as a result of their Jamboree involvement is just tremendous. So that in and of itself is $109,000. We're very fortunate to have some donors that are not always Latter-day Saints. We have one foundation that is not known as a Latter-day Saint Foundation, and they have donated $15,000. We have several $25,000 ones. We have a $50,000 one that came from Arizona from a great scouter and a great friend that is not a member of the, is not a Latter-day Saint. And so we're trying to make a difference in the lives of these youth. Another thing is developing and promoting religious awards. I mentioned that the two religious awards, the Faith in God Award and the On My Honor Award, went away after 1/1/2020. And for that reason, we established two very robust awards. The first for Cub Scout age youth for Latter-day Saints. And by the way, I say for Latter-day Saints, but we've had individuals who are friends of Latter-day Saint Scouts and in Scout troops there say, can I earn that award? And our response is absolutely. Of course you can. We have a good Jewish friend here in Utah who is working on his adult award. I'll talk about that in a minute. And it's a great thing. It's very robust because it has 6 areas of focus that help these young people to learn their duty to God and to be able to do those things that the leaders of the church want them to do. And the first one is building faith and testimony. Each one of them has a scout component. A scout is reverend. This helps a young man or a young woman build faith in Jesus Christ and build their testimony of the gospel as Jesus taught it. Living the gospel, doing your duty to God. The third one is family relationships, strengthening their family, being involved in genealogy research, beginning writing their own personal history. There's not much that they need to do, but, and by the way, these 6 areas of focus are the same in the Light and Truth Award and in the Vanguard Duty to God Award, which is for the older youth and for the adults. But the requirements are much easier in this Light and Truth Award. Fourth is missionary preparation. We want our young men and young women to be prepared to go out into the world if they're called to serve as full-time missionaries. Church history and church organization. This gives them a sense of who they are and what their history is, what the current organization of the church is. And then service. Scout is helpful to a good turn daily. So that's the Light and Truth Award. The award for the young men and young women is on the left. This is the Vanguard Award. The one that has the neck ribbon on it is for the leaders, and it has the same areas of focus. And it helps them to just be better members of their church and of this great work. And it's the same as with other religions, whether it's the Jewish award or the Catholic award, whatever it is, it's helping them learn their duty to God and to be better members of their own faith. And that's so important in this day and age. Vanguard sponsors annual conferences for Latter-day Saints in scouting at Philmont Scout Ranch. This year, because we have the 2 jamborees, we will not be going to Philmont, but this month on the March 25th in the Larry H. Miller Conference Center in Sandy, Utah, we're going to have an all-day conference. Our keynote speaker will be Gary Herbert. In fact, I think I have a flyer. It will be Gary Herbert, who is a former Utah governor. And we have, some of you have heard Brad Harris speak. He was a professor at BYU, a former Scout executive, and just a wonderful teacher. We have 3 Scout executives that will be participating, and Alan Endicott from the Utah councils. There's 1 council now in Utah, Lynn Gunner from Boise, Idaho, and Clark Farr from Idaho Falls. So this is kind of what Vanguard does. It trains, it encourages, it strengthens Latter-day Saints in scouting, but it also gets involved at all levels of scouting. And you know, it's interesting that the faith-based groups it's not been just one way. It's not just a benefit coming from scouting. Scouting benefits from the involvement of faith-based groups in scouting, particularly when we meet internationally. We had an international event in New York a number of years ago, and we found that world scouting in some places was starting to move away from duty to God, especially in Europe, which, by the way, is not the center of scouting. It's interesting, but scouting domestically has been decreasing over the years, the last 40 years, but internationally it continues to rise. And that's why the headquarters of the World Organization of the Scouting Movement, or WOSM, is no longer in Europe. So that's kind of why I'm in scouting and what Vanguard is. If you want more information about scouting or the Scouting Awards, you can go to vanguardscouting.org, and there's all of the information that that you'll need there. So let me just stop right there and just ask what questions you have. We've got just about 9 minutes, and I've got one final story that I want to tell you right at the end. So let's take 5 minutes and any questions that you might have. And if you don't have any questions, I'll talk for the 9 minutes.
So I have a question.
Yeah, Pat.
Since the Church of Latter-day Saints has basically is not chartering scout units anymore, how has that increased or how has that affected the population of Latter-day Saints who are actually still involved in scouting?
Well, let me just give you the numbers for Utah. On December 31st of 2019, we had 212,000. On January 1st of 2020, we had 3,100.
Wow.
Now, let me just tell you that we're seeing an increase. We're seeing parents coming back to scouting. There were a number that stayed on that wanted to eagle, and then they eagled it out. But now we're seeing them eagle and stay. And what's interesting is, even though the church no longer is a charter partner, by the way, Vanguard does not charter organizations. We work with councils to encourage Latter-day Saints to be involved in scouting, but we don't charter. So it's really an interesting thing that's happening. We have some community units where they have neighborhoods that have started to charter a unit. We have some businesses that have stepped forward to charter a unit. In Sandy, Utah, where I lived for 38 years, there is an all Latter-day Saint unit, Latter-day Saint leaders, all of the Latter-day Saint boys, and it's chartered by the Southwest Presbyterian Church, or Southwest Baptist Church. And I was in Yuma, Arizona, just about a month ago, and I took an evening and went by the scout unit that is there. There are a number of Latter-day Saints in that scout unit. It's held at the Sierra Vista Presbyterian Church. And if you don't believe that scouting is family-centered more now than ever before, you really ought to go to that Sierra Vista Presbyterian Church on a Wednesday night, because in one room, there were the lion and the tiger cubs. They were working on one thing. And then in another unit, another room, there were the Cub Scouts. They were working on coin collecting and learning about coins. A Latter-day Saint was their cub leader. Then there was the Weeblos that were in another room. And by the way, there's a number of Latter-day Saint scouts there. Two of the assistant scoutmasters were Latter-day Saints. Only 2 scouts in the entire group were members of the Sierra Vista Presbyterian Church. And so then in another room in the cultural hall, and then out in the field, they had scouts that were working. And I'll tell you, it was boy run. It was really well done. The reason I say boy run, and you have to be a little careful because girls are now involved, is because you go outside, and then this big hall area that was outside in the middle of this church courtyard, they must have had 30 young women who were involved in a Girl Scouts GSA, Girl Scouts of America program. If I would have come the next Tuesday, there is another scout troop that uses the Scouts BSA girl program, and they're there in the middle of that thing right there. And there were parents that were involved in every single one of these groups. And those parents that weren't involved were in another room over in the corner having a Bible study program. It was amazing, this great family involvement in scouting. So we're seeing, Pat, long answer to a short question, but we're seeing people come from the out of the woodwork to provide to charter or organizations, to be charter partners, but also to provide facilities where they can meet.
Thank
So,
you. So,
other questions?
I had one more question too. So are there actually Vanguard scout units that are not part of the BSA, or does Vanguard encourage Latter-day Saints to become members of the BSA?
Oh, no, Vanguard does not have any scouts. We have no scouts. We don't charter scouts. And so it's not really a scouting association in that way. It's much the same as the NCCS, the National Catholic Committee of Scouting, that supports scouting for Catholics, or the Baptist, the Association of Methodist Men that are involved to support scouting for Methodists. It supports, it encourages, but it doesn't charter organizations. So let me just tell you one final story that really warms my heart. Back in 2017, there was a young man that came to the Jamboree, and his name was Joe. Joe was a little different than most kids that came to the Jamboree. He came with an aide, and he has severe spasticity and is really not able to get around by himself. He has a wheelchair, and this aide is to help him to get ready for the day. And so Joe gets up the first day after arriving there, gets a good night's sleep, gets up in the morning, and his aide says, "Joe, what do you want to do today?" And Joe said, "I want to go mountain biking." The aide says, "Okay, let's go." So he gets him all dressed, gets his teeth brushed, puts him in a wheelchair, and off they go to this mountain bike course. And by the way, if you've never been to the summit, it is about a $600 or $700 million facility that has number 1, 2, and 3 of quality in the world of every activity that has, including archery, BMX, whitewater rafting, rappelling, I mean, all kinds of stuff. So they go to this unbelievable mountain bike course, and the guy wheels Joe up there, and the staffer is there. This staffer is a 19-year-old young man, and he looks at Joe and he goes, "Can I help you?" And Joe says, "I want to go mountain biking." Now, this staffer could have said, "You know, there are a lot of stuff that you can do at the Jamboree, but mountain biking's not one. It's just too dangerous." And but instead, he said, "Have you ever been on a bike before?" And Joe said, "No, but it sure looks fun." So the staffer said, "Let's see what we can do." So he calls another staffer over, and they put their helmets on. They get a helmet on Joe. They get Joe with the help of his aide and the two of these staffers on this bike. He grabs hold of the handlebars like there was no tomorrow. And with one staffer on each side of the bike, they start him on this track, and he goes up and it goes down and it goes up and down. Any normal human being would be absolutely dead by the time they get finished. Well, by the time they get finished with this course, these two staffers are they have nothing left. They put it all on the course, taking him, making sure he didn't fall over, and each one of them holding a handlebar, and he's on the back of the seat there to guide him. And Joe's going, "Whoa, this was really great." And the staffer, the first staffer that met him, was just doubled over. He was so tired, and he kind of straightened up and he said, "You like that?" And Joe goes, "Yeah, that was great." And he said, "Have you ever been on a skateboard?" And Joe said, "No, but I'd love to." So he takes him over to the skateboard park. They put him on what I've forgotten what it's called, but when they put him on his belly on the skateboard, and Joe goes around this course on the skateboard. Now, the reason I tell you this is because every one of us need to be a Joe. We need to get up every morning and we need to be ready to challenge the world, do something that we've never done. I have to tell you, my challenge now is I'm old enough that my girls and my wife think I'm too old to do this, but I am training for a half Ironman. That's my Joe in me. But my message is also, By the way, Jared, don't tell my wife that. She doesn't know. Okay. She just thinks I'm training to lose weight.
Well, this is recorded, so just. be
Yeah, I
careful.
know, just so it doesn't get to her. I know. But we also need to be a staffer. When somebody has a dream, we can't be a dream killer. We've got to be a dream builder. That staffer could have killed that dream. He could have blamed it on the lawyers and the risk managers, but he didn't. And so, like Tom Brokaw said, we need to make a difference, and we are making a difference. And I am so grateful for all that you're doing as Rotarians. I'm grateful for the scouting program. There's never been a time in the history of this world, even when Baden-Powell established this in 1907, when scouting is needed as much as it is today. It's needed by the young men, it's needed by the young women. For those of you that understand the division of that, we don't have boy and girl troops, we have boy troops and girl troops, because at that age, boys need to develop leadership. Girls are better leaders, they're better communicators, they're more organized, they think more clearly, but boys need to learn leadership skills. And so for that reason, when we made the decision during the time that I was national commissioner to bring girls into the movement, I drafted the language that said nothing. We are committed as a national executive committee that nothing in this decision will in any way negatively impact the leadership experience of the young men in the Boy Scouts of America. So it's a great program. Thank you for getting involved. Thank you for all you do. And I'm just grateful for the blessing of associating with Rotarians and Scouters all over the world. So thank you and good night.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. That was super interesting. So, if we have a lot of guests here tonight, and if you are in like this kind of programming, we do this twice a month, and Pat Curley is going to talk to you about how to become a member.
Hi, so I'm Pat. I'm the membership chairman of the club. And our club is we're a virtual club, as you probably figured out. I think everybody in our club is involved in scouting also, and that's one of our that is our focus, is international scouting and Rotary International, and how do we keep those two together? Thus the friendship knot with the blue of the Rotary on one side and the purple World Scouting on the other. So how do you become a member of our club? Well, first of all, membership in the club. Once you're a Rotarian, you can be a member of our club. You can attend any Rotary meetings throughout the world. You can be involved in your area events and things like that. So it's a great opportunity. And you'll find that being a member of our club is much more affordable than some of the other clubs where you're buying meals and all kinds of things like that. So how do you become a member? Well, you submit an application to us. And as a matter of fact, Mel and Lisa have submitted applications. Thank you, Lisa. You just did that today. And I put a link in the chat board that you can just click on that link. There's an application you fill out. And what happens then is the board reviews your application. Then what we do is we present you to the membership. And then you're in the club. You're officially in the club when you pay your bill. And then we will send you a beautiful friendship knot neckerchief that is great, and you get your official Rotary pin that gets you into any Rotary meeting anywhere in the world. Are there any questions or concerns about that? Okay, and like I said, the link is right there in the chat room. If you're interested, go ahead and fill out the application, fire it downrange, and then we will we'll take it from there. Okay, I think someone just filled one out now. Thank you.
Great.
That's all I got.
Thank you, Pat. It's 7 o'clock here, so I'm going to go ahead and close our meeting officially. Ring the bell. And thank you all for joining. Jeremy, can you stick around for a few minutes to chat?
Sure.
Okay.
Charles, I forgot to tell you one thing. I went to church with Rick Barnes and at least today, and they